Good evening, everyone. Glad you could join us. And welcome to tonight's Women of Peace Corps Legacies Women and Girls Win. I'm Jody Olson, co-president of Women of Peace Corps Legacy, and my co-facilitator is Pam Martin, co-chair of the Women of Peace Corps Legacy Awards Committee. But our real stars tonight are Lauren Spigel, the Kate Rafferty Emerging Leader Award winner, and Dr. Katrin Sara Sadigh, the Deborah Harding Women of Achievement Award winner. Excitedly, as we will see and hear this evening, these two amazing women have both done much to help other women and girls around the globe become winners in their own families and communities. In the next hour plus, these awardees will share their own stories about how early Peace Corps service influenced their decisions to devote careers to working in women's and children's health. They will illustrate with examples of their contributions to mitigate challenges facing women and girls, which relates to our theme tonight: how can women and girls win in our world today? Tomorrow is the International Day of the Girl Child, a day to celebrate girls for all that they are and who they can become everywhere. Tonight is our celebration of this day, honored worldwide. Women of Peace Corps Legacy's mission is to advance women and girls' empowerment through celebrating the legacy of the Peace Corps community to empower women and girls, fostering and nurturing relationships between the Peace Corps community and others that empower women and girls, and importantly, inspiring all of us to a commitment to a lifetime of service. To do this through Women of Peace Corps Legacy, we have a mentoring program, awards programs like this evening, podcasts featuring women that inspire, coffee chats, an annual Peace Corps headquarters in-person extraordinary women event, networking activities, and a quarterly newsletter. We will give more information and the link to sign up for Women of Peace Corps Legacy at the end of the program, and I hope everyone who is not signed up will do so tonight. Now, for the fun of the program, for the best part of the program tonight, and to begin it, I turn to my co-facilitator, Pam Martin. Pam, it's yours.
Oh,
Thank you, Jody. Welcome all. Welcome everybody to Women and Girls Win. We are delighted to present to you this evening the winners of our two awards. One for a promising professional in the earlier phases of her career, and the other for a more seasoned and accomplished professional. And it's no accident that our winners represent different generations, because this intergenerational aspect is really a hallmark of our organization. Women of Peace Corps Legacy is all about women reaching out across cultures and across generations to help and support each other. So for our program this evening, each of our two award winners will give their remarks on how women and girls can win in the world today. This will be followed by your questions and comments and a more general discussion. As our winners speak, please feel free to jot down your questions, your comments in the chat right as they're speaking. And once they have both completed their remarks, they will address your questions and comments. Please note also that I think our program this evening probably will end about 8:15 to 8:30. All right, so let's get started. First up is the winner of the Kate Rafferty Emerging Leader Award. This award honors an emerging woman leader under the age of 40 who has shown a demonstrated dedication to improving the lives of women and girls. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you the winner of the 2024 Kate Raftery Emerging Leader Award, Lauren Spigel. But before I turn over the floor to Lauren, I just have a few words about her. Lauren's passion for improving maternal and child health took off when she served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Nicaragua, 2011 to 2013. She's currently pursuing a PhD in maternal and child health at the University of North Carolina, and she is a senior research specialist at Ariadne Labs. Her work aims to bridge the gap between knowledge and practice to ensure that every pregnant and birthing person experiences high quality, respectful, and dignified care, no matter who they are or where they live. The floor is yours, Lauren.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you everyone who showed up. So I'd like to start by introducing you to my Peace Corps group. So half of us focused on sexual health, and the other half of us, which was my group, we were maternal and child health volunteers. We lovingly dubbed ourselves the Mother Lovers, and confession time, I'm still a mother lover to this day. I've spent my career working to improve maternal and child health, so my talk inevitably is going to be focused on how we can build structures to make life better for moms all around the world. Next slide, please. So several years ago, before I was a parent myself, I worked on a project where we conducted qualitative interviews with new moms in Tanzania, Malawi, and India to learn about their feeding practices with their babies. There were so many examples of women waking up at all hours of the night to feed their babies. Like the quote from this mom in Tanzania where she said, "She breastfeeds more frequently at night. When you turn, she wants it. I believe that's when she breastfeeds the most." And there are other examples like from this mom in India of having to figure out things like how to go to the bathroom when you're the sole caregiver of a baby and how to shower. And I just remember thinking about how difficult it all sounded. And I wondered, how do they do it? And how do they do anything else other than be a mom? Then, fittingly, my life changed forever on International Women's Day in 2022 when my daughter was born. I did not go into parenthood lightly. Through my work, I saw many ways in which parenthood in general and motherhood in particular is challenging and can limit opportunities for women who become parents. But after making the leap, which was a couple years after the qualitative project and half a world away, I shared in the universal experience of new motherhood. So this is a screenshot of the app I use to track every breastfeed, pumping session, bottle feed, and diaper change. And you can see that new motherhood is constant. Going to the bathroom is a challenge, and I often found myself on the toilet with an infant in my lap and skipping showers entirely because what other choice did I have? Infants eat every 2 to 3 hours, and that affects how new parents and especially new mothers allocate their time. This experience is universal, but the context in which women live can vary considerably, and it can affect the decisions we're able to make about our lives. Next slide, please. So I've been thinking about what women in general and new mothers in particular need to thrive. And I've come to the conclusion that it's the same thing that women and girls need everywhere at every stage of life. We need agency. Agency to decide who our partners are, agency to decide whether or not to have children, agency to decide our preferred approach to pregnancy care, agency to make decisions during childbirth, agency to decide how to feed and care for our children, agency to decide whether or not we work outside of the home, among other critical decisions. Essentially, we need to be the decision makers of our own lives. So how do we ensure that women are the decision makers over their own lives? We need certain supports and structures that enable new moms to have agency. So this diagram will be familiar to anyone who works in public health. And for those of you who don't or haven't seen something like this before, it's just a way to conceptualize how we're all shaped by the world around us. So we have like the individual is kind of surrounded by their relationships, which is surrounded by their community, which is surrounded by the policy and society that shapes all of that.
We
So
have
I'm going to
interrupt
use this
before it starts
framework.
to digest. Good point.
I'm going to use this framework to highlight the questions we should be asking about our policies, communities, relationships, and our own individual experiences to increase agency among new moms. And I'm specifically highlighting factors that I feel are modifiable, those that can be changed through policy, advocacy, and organizing. So starting at the policy level, societal expectations of women and moms can shape our opportunities. Some examples are things like, are abortion rights protected? Thank you. Is there paid leave available to mothers? How about to fathers? What kind of federally funded safety net programs are available for food, formula, diapers, and other essential supplies? Is there policy to provide universal childcare? And is that childcare high quality? And in the most extreme cases, are women allowed to leave the home without male chaperones? At the community level, is there access to high quality and affordable childcare? Is there access to healthcare, lactation support, and other shared community resources? What are the community norms and expectations around a mother's role? How accepted is breastfeeding in public spaces? And then at the interpersonal level, is the mom partnered or single? If partnered, how supportive is the partner? How are roles divided? How close are immediate family members, and what is the relationship with them? Are there other forms of social support through friends and extended family? And finally, at the individual level, how old is the mom? What kind of access to education has she had? Is she healthy? Does her household have access to power and electricity to safely store breast milk and formula? What are her own internalized beliefs about gender roles and her ability to make decisions? Is she employed outside of the house? And if not, does she want to be? I know I went through these maps quite quickly, and these examples are not comprehensive. The idea is to show that everyone's context when they enter into motherhood is different. And no matter where you live, there are opportunities to improve the structures and systems that can increase agency among new moms. So what's not covered by that framework are the interruptions that can shake the foundation of our lives. I live in central North Carolina. We were lucky that Hurricane Helene did not affect us like it did the western part of our state. And now, unfortunately, Florida is also experiencing or just experienced another catastrophic storm. But regarding what happened in North Carolina, so I'm actually currently pregnant again. And as a person who's currently pregnant, I'm part of a Facebook group for other pregnant people in the state. And one person wrote that her water had broke during the storm. She was in the hospital, but the hospital had no water. She and her partner were then weighing the risks of staying or trying to get out to an area that was less devastated by the storm. And like the roads were not really passable. So people were sending her advice on Facebook about how to keep her infant alive if she gave birth during the journey. And this is in Asheville, which is a well-developed and bustling city that suddenly, after a storm, was devastated by floods and lost access to the essential supplies that everyone needs. Others wrote of need for midwifery support, breast milk, formula, diapers, and other essentials to keep their babies healthy. When I had a newborn in 2022, we experienced a formula shortage in the United States. People could not meet the basic need of feeding their babies. And then as an example of a less dire interruption, but still a very real experience, our healthy baby in childcare missed an average of 4 full days of daycare each month during her first year, which left us scrambling to rearrange our full-time work schedules. So you have to imagine how unforeseen disruptions, whether man-made or natural disasters, or even just normal sick days, can affect decisions that mothers can make about their lives. Without supports in place, the responsibility of taking care of children often fall on mothers. So coming back to this framework, while certain aspects of motherhood are universal, every woman is going to live within a different context shaped by different political beliefs, social norms, and access to resources. It's up to all of us to think deeply about how to protect the agency of women and girls within our own lives and our own communities. In the face of imperfect political structures and natural and man-made disasters, I like to think about this framework like it's Swiss cheese. So there's no perfect place on earth in which the agency of women is protected 100% of the time. We need to build resilience by improving women's agency through multiple layers of protection to ensure that new moms thrive even when there are gaps. And if we do this, then maybe, just maybe, we can all live out in a world in which we're all mother lovers. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. There we go. Thanks, Lauren, for highlighting that the very critical and powerful lens of the mother. And I love how you weave your own journey through your remarks. And yes, may the world have more mother lovers. Note that each of our winners will receive a $1,000 grant to give to either a Peace Corps volunteer project or to a 501c3 of their choice that focuses on women and girls. So I would like to mention here that Lauren will be directing her grant of $1,000 to Babies Need Bottoms, a 501c3 that provides diapers, wipes, and other supplies to families in need in Western North Carolina. And this is because the Peace Corps taught Lauren to think globally and act locally. And as a North Carolina resident, as she said, she is looking locally to help out families in need at this really terrible, challenging time with the worst flooding in generations in Western North Carolina. So thank you. Thank you, Lauren. Don't forget, everyone, to write down any questions that you have for Lauren. And let us now turn to the winner of our second award, the Deborah Harding Woman of Achievement Award. This second award honors a Peace Corps woman whose lifelong contributions have made a significant difference in the lives of women and girls in the world. And I am delighted to introduce the very impressive winner of the 2024 Deborah Harding Woman of Achievement Award, Katrin Sara Sadigh. But before I give her the floor, let me say just a few words about Lauren. Katrin. Like Lauren, Katrin was also much influenced by her Peace Corps service. And for her, it was in Morocco and Kenya. Her service helped her realize that a path in medicine and public health would be an effective way to address global health inequities and to promote a strong interest in humanism and the personal narrative. She was trained in general internal medicine and HIV medicine, followed by training in infectious diseases and applied epidemiology, all of which brought her back to the continent of Africa to work in the roles of educator, researcher, physician, and epidemiologist. She's received many recognitions for her work, not just this award, but many others. And that includes the Paul C. Schnitger International Health Award for her contributions as an epidemic intelligence service officer with the CDC. In her current position with the CDC, Katrin collaborates closely with state and local public health departments, as well as partners internationally to support surveillance efforts and outbreak response for Ebola, Marburg, hantavirus, and other high-hazard viruses. Katrin, the floor is yours.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Thank you to Jody, Pamela, Megan, Lynn, Alondra, and others at the Women of Peace Corps Legacy for this recognition. It is an honor to be with you today and to be awarded the Deborah Harding Women of Achievement Award. For those of you who know Debbie, you can imagine how humbled I am to receive an award that originated from her impressive contributions to the lives of women and girls. On the eve of the International Day of the Girl Child, I reflect on 3 key events that have brought me to this moment. The first story begins with my childhood in Iran in the wake of the revolution in 1979. Despite the horrors that ensued, my mother had held out on leaving the country because she did not wish to leave her parents behind. Until one day, she spoke with the head of the daycare center that I attended with my brothers. Earlier, he had requested that my mother bring swimsuits so that we could splash around in the kiddie pool. This time around, hanging his head in shame, he informed her that girls are being forced to wear a maknae, a form of head covering worn by girls under Islam. Unlike a hijab that needs to be deftly folded, tucked, or tied, a maknae is like a balaclava, easy to put on and keep on, even by the youngest of girls. Along with the rest of the garb that I was required to wear, a sheet of black covering me from head to foot, swim lessons, among other things, were no longer an option. My mother could not stomach this, and with the encouragement of my grandmother, she found her resolve to flee. After seeking shelter in different countries, we traveled to the US under political asylum in 1984. This single decision made by my parents in the face of great uncertainty can only be described as a seismic shift in my life, particularly as a young girl. The second story relates to the decision of where to attend college. Like many teenagers, I was both fragile and fierce. But it was not until I listened to my father for once and visited the campus of Wellesley College that I understood that what I was battling stemmed in many ways from the life that we had left behind. Who is this mother who had gathered her children close and left behind all else that she knew? And what of my grandmothers, both of them defiantly staking ground unheard of for women of their generation in Iran? And what of all the other women and girls who remained? Where did that land me? Now, some may argue that what a women's college provides is no more than a construct, an artificial environment which purports to liberate young women in the absence of men. But it was within this artifice, in the open discourse among the campus women, that the swells of women's inquisitiveness and ingenuity washed over me, and I began a deeper study into who I was, who women are, and discovered our power. The third story, probably not surprisingly, is about the Peace Corps. I traveled to rural Morocco in the maternal child health program, one of 20 American women serving as volunteers. Our instructors were mostly women, and in accelerated fashion, we bonded over our shared stories as women in Morocco and the US, as women of various tribes and states. It was this bond that allowed us to have the difficult conversations that followed shortly thereafter when the US invaded Iraq. It was a true cultural exchange, as John F. Kennedy may have imagined it when he established the Peace Corps in 1961. After evacuation, I re-enlisted with the health education program in Kenya, living amongst the Swahili and Giriama tribes. Often, during the weekly health class that I led, I was struck by how much these women were teaching me. Women who were defying their husbands to seek birth control in the local clinics, others who faced the risk of social shunning to separate from abusive or neglectful husbands to live as independent mothers. I was welcomed into one circle after another of women and girls, funerals during which women prepared the bodies, Eid celebrations in which all visited the eldest matriarchs of the family. These circles connected me at once to the community at large and to the world within, so much so that I realized that the answer to who I am was tied to what do I want to do in this world. My pursuit of medicine and global health was in part anchored in the drive to amplify other women and girls to find their own power and find their way to a meaningful place in the world. But I was not only driven by the vast potential that I knew women and girls are capable of, but by what I witnessed as social and health disparities shouldered most heavily by women and girls. In my final months in Kenya, I attended 2 funerals in my village. One was for a young pregnant woman who sold snacks to the children outside the primary school. With no easy access to a local hospital, she died due to complications related to childbirth. And the second was for a 5-year-old girl who died from malaria. Her body placed flat on a large rock near the family's home as the company gathered to mourn. I believe many audience members here understand the gender biases that potentiate such outcomes. Through the years of my training and practice, I have had the great fortune of guiding women as medical students and residents through both written and unwritten curricula. As a new physician devoted to HIV medicine, I learned that women face unique challenges even among other vulnerable populations, and I committed to be as effective as I could be in their care. As a researcher and epidemiologist, I have pulled in as co-authors female colleagues who have merited authorship, but who have not been given the opportunity. I have used my experiences on the ground to inform protocols and public health initiatives to be as inclusive as possible. And I have underscored the unique circumstances faced by women and girls during health emergencies of all kinds, and by the women who serve as emergency responders. All along, I have been keenly aware of how lucky I am, that I stand on the top of a mountain because of those who have opened the world to me. And it is only through great privilege of education and opportunity that I am where I am and have witnessed what I have in the lives of women and girls. And now, with this recognition by the women of the Peace Corps legacy, I find myself charged with a re-examination of my life and with the responsibility of defining what I must do next for the communities that have given so freely to me. Because this is no longer just my story, but that of so many other women and girls in Iran and elsewhere who are brimming with ambition and promise. Thank you.
Whoa. Thank you, Lauren. Katrin, I'm sorry. Keep saying that. Katrin, that is, thank you for sharing your own story of humanism and your own personal narrative as you put in your own bio. That's very powerful and absolutely inspiring. So thank you. Note that Katrin will be directing her $1,000 award grant to the Peace Corps Fund, the Lorette Rupee Gender Development Fund, which supports community-initiated and volunteer-led projects that empower women and girls. Projects include things like establishing women's cooperatives, getting access for women to resources and services, exploring gender roles, increasing training programs, and so forth. So thank you to both of our speakers tonight, Lauren and Katrin. I want to congratulate both of you on your award. And thank you. Thank you for speaking with us tonight, sharing your stories, and thank you for the amazing work that you both do. We turn now to the question and answer part of the evening. So let me urge you again, if you have any questions that you would like Katrin or Lauren to address, please just put them right in the chat. But we do have some questions here. So maybe we can start with a question that both of you touched on, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit more. How did your Peace Corps service affect who you are today? And maybe we'll start with Lauren and then go to Katrin.
I know it's such a big question. I mean, I did the Peace Corps when I was in my early 20s, and I just feel like it was such a formative time in my life. I really felt like I became an adult while I was a Peace Corps volunteer. It was the first time I was living on my own, um, outside of a university kind of environment. And it was in a different country, in a place where I had to learn a new language and a new culture and build all new relationships. And I think just going through that process was really foundational, in how I understand the world. And it was incredibly humbling, like a huge learning experience for me. I had studied public health in undergrad, and I had done it. I had gotten interested in global health, and I had done like an internship. I studied abroad in Switzerland and did an internship at the World Health Organization, and it was just like so macro level, that I realized I really needed to like have that community experience to be a public health professional that could contribute something more useful than just coming from my own experience living in Massachusetts where I grew up, and I went to undergrad in Maryland. And so I needed to like get out of that, out of my own lived experience to become a better practitioner of public health and especially global public health. So how did it like define me or like make me who I am? I made like the best friends ever in my group. Like I'm still very close with my friends. And they've been like such huge supports in my career. I mean, even preparing for this presentation, like they're the ones who I ran it by and I was like, does this sound right to you guys? So they've just been like constant throughout my career. And I ended up marrying another returned Peace Corps volunteer. I feel like we like had that whole Peace Corps connection experience. Actually, he also served in Morocco. And yeah, I think it's just been like kind of like the thing that like it's the foundation for my entire life. So I don't know what to say other than that, but yeah, it was like hugely influential for me.
Well, thank you. You said quite a bit. Thank you. That's great. Katrin.
Yeah, thank you. So, you know, I think honestly for me, Peace Corps could not have been more pivotal. You know, my family has very much from the beginning had a message of, you know, humanity and devotion of a life in service since we were quite young. And I think the experience of being immigrants and, you know, being reminded very often just how grateful we are for what we have and where we came from, you know, that sense of sort of humility and trying to lend any part of that forward to service, I think was a message that's been resounding in our family since childhood. And I think for me after college, you know, I was very much, you know, excited about all the possibilities that existed out there. You know, I really felt like I could do anything or be anyone. And at the time, I was incredibly devoted to Shakespeare and had been contemplating pursuing a PhD in Shakespearean studies. And I decided, for the reasons I mentioned, really that pull to go back to some of the communities similar to the country that I had left and the communities that I had potentially like left behind. And so I applied to the Peace Corps, not knowing exactly what I was going to find. I wanted to learn a new language. I wanted to immerse myself in something different. I wanted to feel uncomfortable, out of my comfort zone. I wanted to know that I could be alone and enjoy my loneliness and my being alone. Just find comfort in that and try to build a community with that internal strength. And honestly, you know, all of that happened. I found a community because of my Muslim last name. I was immediately integrated into the community of women. And after I learned Swahili, people just thought I was a local. So my integration happened very quickly. And it brought me into the world of these women in a way that, it wouldn't have been possible otherwise. And it was during those last months that, I realized that as much as I love art and Shakespeare, and there's still a part of my heart, years later that, gets really swayed when I hear, Shakespearean verse. I was just thinking, there's maybe 1% of the world's population that will read my dissertations and understand, much less understand it, and yet I was seeing vaccination drives by USAID and other partners. I was seeing these big, public health initiatives around contraception and maternal health when I was out there. And I was like, what a way to reach, so many women and so many populations, trying to understand the cultural aspects and sensitivities and drawing that in with the public health aspects and to really try to bring impact and empower local communities. And it just felt, as much as I loved it, Shakespeare just felt very irrelevant at that moment. And I've never really looked back. That was kind of the beginning for me. And by the time I started my post-bac pre-med studies, because I hadn't been a science major, I was committed. And, I just did the work and, have really been so fortunate to be where I am because of that experience.
Wow. That's wonderful. It's taken you, yes, quite a ways from the Shakespeare, the study of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Please. We have some interesting questions here relating more to your work now. Here's a really interesting one. I'm going to throw it out there. Either of you, Katrin or Lauren, if you feel you have a good answer for this, what have been tipping points for those in authority to make changes or empower women? Like, what are those tipping points that lead to the change that we want to see for women?
I'm happy to take the first stab at this.
Yours.
I'm not really in a position to give too many specific examples in my current job with the US government. But I would say that what I have noticed is, there's been several moments where we really needed a decision and we needed someone high up to understand the problem. For example, whether it was, certain outbreaks and really, the involvement of women in those outbreaks and really trying to protect the responders. I'm just coming up with sort of generic examples here. But what we realized is that the people making the decisions were not actually on the ground seeing what we were seeing. And really what I've learned over the years is you have to learn where the power sits in terms of the decision making, like who, and that is often who has the money, who is making the decisions about budgets and who's moving that money. And if you can bring that person to the ground, to the event, and hear the stories, look at whatever initiative is being rolled out, I feel like there's something about that experience that is very moving and it's powerful. You can't even describe sometimes, like people are transformed when you take them out of whatever office they're sitting in and you bring them to, this village, which is, the highest rate of HIV. In fact, it was where HIV originated, and, and to see how it's affected the community and how the community, has learned to grapple with it. And in just that one moment, change has happened, and that person can then go and do that advocacy and hopefully pull in those resources. And, you know, it's not just one voice, it's now several voices that are resounding. And so I think that, you know, I typically have tried to stay outside of some of these more political discussions, but I've realized that you know, we need everyone at the table. We can't just be public health advocates. We can't just be educators. We need, you know, the whoever's running the budgets. We need the program managers. We need the CFOs, the CEOs, you know, and to really, you know, when I was doing my Fogarty, they trained us on how to do the elevator speech, you know, just get your message succinct and clear and say it to as many people as you can.
Yeah, so connecting that authority or that power to the actual experience that needs addressing is did I have that right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
wonderful. Anything to add, Lauren?
I mean, I think like Katrin said, you know, like I'm also not really involved in like politics and like decision making and stuff, but I think just like it actually makes me think a lot of Rebecca Solnit's book Hope in the Dark, where she provides so many anecdotes. Like her whole thesis in that book is that it can feel like nothing is ever going to change, and then suddenly there's an event that sparks grassroots movements that then like create excitement, and then that creates change. So it makes me think about that. But in terms of like direct experience in my work, research moves so slowly. I'm in research. Like my hope is that my research will like create change, but I think like the timeline for that is so slow. So I don't have like, I don't think a good example from my own work experience of like making that like tipping point happen.
Mhm. This relates very much to another question here, which is how can we accelerate empowerment for girls and women? I guess it's like, how can we get to that tipping point and move things? She was particularly interested in accelerating policy shifts on paid maternity leave, healthcare, and educational and economic opportunities for women and girls. So it's almost this, it's very similar, but a little bit different.
You know, Pam, I think just, you know, just some initial thoughts on that question. Very recently, I've been tackling with this concept of advocacy. You know, I felt like before I joined, you know, a government agency, I had more of a voice. Like I could, you know, get up on a stage and speak as loudly as I wanted to about, you know, the current state of our um, you know, healthcare systems, you know, the DOPS decision, you know, just list them, you know, all of the causes that, you know, my heart is bleeding out for. And I can't really do that in my current role. And I think, you know, as Peace Corps volunteers, like you all remember that during training, they told us that, you know, when any word that you speak is on behalf of the US government. And so, you know, I felt very much like I couldn't do a lot of that work. And that I was often just doing work kind of more in the periphery and part of writing protocols and, you know, advocating for women in other ways, but not sort of on a stage with, you know, like broadcasting my voice the way that you could if you're with an NGO or you're a writer or journalist. But you know, I've been thinking a lot about this and, you know, speaking to some of my mentors. And, you know, one of the things that I've been told that I've been really enjoying this concept now that, you know, this kind of advocacy can really happen at any level. You know, you don't need to have a stage, big or small, that you can find ways of, you know, making that change. And if more people felt emboldened in their work as researchers or academicians or, you know, whatever your role, that you can find a way and be charged with that task. And I think maybe this could have more of an exponential effect if more people felt like they could do something, and it wasn't just, you know, even myself who've been in these, you know, positions where I've seen the kind of work that could be done. I didn't think about it that way. It was like, oh, but I can't, you know, use my voice. But it's like, but think about the ways that you know, your tasks and your responsibilities at your institutions, like finding ways of really committing to it, and you can find a way, you know. And so I've been trying to use that sort of avenue in my own life. And then when other people come to me with a similar, you know, dismay that they could be doing more, should be doing more, sort of, you know, brainstorming together, like how you can use your current position to actually do that act, and not feel like you don't have that ability. I don't know if that's exactly an answer to that question.
Yeah.
I'd love to build on that too. It makes me think about some local advocacy that I was part of when I lived in Brookline, Massachusetts. It's this idea of just like local organizing, like that's where you can like really make change. It's not exactly related to, you know, national paid family leave policies like Carol was asking in the chat, but we were advocating for more affordable housing. And we started off as a small little group of a few people meeting in a living room. And over a couple years, we built a movement and we got people to run for local office for town meeting. And now suddenly, like we're passing, well, I'm saying I've since moved from Massachusetts, so I'm not part of it anymore. I'm watching from a distance, but they've like passed new zoning laws in town that allow for more affordable housing to happen. And that was not the case a few years ago when we started. Like we were almost considered pariahs. Like people were posting about us in local groups and saying, you know, like, where is their money coming from? Like we had any money, like what is their, they thought we were, you know, developers, we were all renters. And so it's just, it's been really, really exciting to see that group grow and to see all the people who were inspired to run for local office and make that change at a local level.
Hmm. Yeah, very interesting. Let me ask another question that's a little different, but it relates. All these questions kind of relate to each other. Um, in your opinion, what types of programs, initiatives, or approaches make the biggest impact in terms of advancing women and girls in the world? A lot of things influence or can, but where do you think, like, where would we get the biggest, you know, they say bang for the buck? What's the most effective in your experience in terms of impact?
I feel like that's such a big question. I guess I can just
Maybe
speak
too
to,
big.
I can speak to my own work, I guess a little bit. So I study maternal health, which is in itself a really broad topic, but like um, where I try to focus is like this idea of centering the birthing person in that research and like really trying to like define quality of care based on how that person, the birthing person, experiences that care. And so I think that concept of it really gets down to like listening to people and like identifying like true needs and meeting those needs. And I don't know. I feel like in order to have something that is influential, it needs to actually meet people's needs. And to do that, you have to talk to people and understand and like involve people with lived experience in whatever issue you're trying to tackle. Um, and at the same
Yeah,
time, like policy makes huge change too. Like if you can if you have the power to like enact like national paid family leave, like that's going to affect millions of people. So I don't know, it's both.
But absolutely what you're saying relates very much back to what Katrin was saying before about, connecting the authority or the power to the actual experience of that need, when they experience it themselves. That makes the big difference. That's wonderful. Let me ask a completely different question. That is, I think, a great question here. Where are you finding inspiration these days? Both of you. I'd love to hear from both of you on that one. Where do you find inspiration? There's so many, challenges and a lot of discord and so forth, but where do you find your inspiration? Either one.
Pam, this is a very easy answer for me. I there's a reason I'm speaking to you all from Sierra Leone right now, where it is, almost 11, or what time is it now? Yeah, almost midnight. So, for me, it's sort of, again, going back to the people, being surrounded by the communities that I'm aiming to serve, that I'm hoping to better understand their needs and understand their roles, and have these conversations, with, the ministries of health and other partners, but then also just making sure I'm staying honest and rooted amongst the people that I'm hoping to work with, and I'm hoping to learn from, and when things, it's interesting because when I feel myself really dragging in my soul, and of course there's a lot going on in the world right now that can really wear one down, I find myself in Africa, whether it's Sierra Leone or DRC or, Tanzania, wherever it might be, and I just feel re-energized, and I think, and it's really funny because my father, who's actually also on the call, I believe today, we grew up with him also traveling a lot for work. He was in global health as a physician, and, we could see this change in him. He would come back and he would be he would just be so energized and enthusiastic, and he would have like recovered his energy, and we would just be so like, what's happening here, until we started doing our own trips and our own work. And I completely understand that now, and so and I think that the second quick response would be the women in my life who are doing really incredible things. And, we can't all be high and all be low at the same time. So I feel like when I'm high, I can have some energy to give others. And when I'm feeling like I need some encouragement, I can reach out to my mentors and other folks that I know are doing like really amazing work. And, just in that energy and spirit, I feel like I can be inspired to continue.
Lovely. Lovely. Lauren, what inspires you?
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer is so similar. It's the people around me. It's, I mean, the topic that I'm studying. So I guess I'm starting my dissertation phase now on at my PhD program, and so I'm like diving deep into one topic, and I'm looking at how to use the intervention that I'm studying is about how to center the birthing person. It's basically a teamwork and communication tool so that like the birthing person and the nurse and the midwife and the obstetrician, like everyone in the room, the partner, the doula, like they all come together at certain points during labor and delivery, and they talk through what's going on and they make decisions together, and everything's written on the whiteboard, so it's very transparent. And I'm looking at that intervention in terms of how it affects people's feelings of autonomy and decision making during childbirth, and also in terms of how it affects interventions like cesarean section. And so being in my mid 30s, a lot of people around me myself included, are pregnant, having babies, like building their families. And so I find that I'm constantly surrounded by people who are having these birth experiences, and I'm hearing them directly from my friends, my family members. I have two sisters. We're all having babies kind of back to back to back to back. Um, so I think just like hearing people's stories really drives me as I'm diving deep into the literature and reading everything that people have ever written about birthing experiences and cesarean sections. It really makes me feel like my work matters and it's important and I want to keep going.
That's wonderful. Do you, um, do you, either of you or both of you, do you think that your gender identity as a woman has been an asset or a liability to you personally in all of your, your success and reaching your personal goals? Has it worked for you or worked against you? What do you think?
I can start. You sent this question ahead of time, so I've thought about this a little bit. I think in some ways, like it has been very beneficial, especially given my like research area of interest. I identify as a woman. At this point in my life, I identify as a birthing person and a pregnant person. I think like having that lived experience and that identity can be helpful when I'm studying that content. So I think in that way, it has been really, really helpful. Especially doing qualitative data analysis where I interview people and I think that you get like a certain level of like trust or like, um, yeah, I think trust, like you can build trust when you have that shared experience. And then I was thinking about like in other ways, um, I I'm I grew up with having a lot of math anxiety. I think that I'm working towards recovery in that kind of sense. I consider myself a very late bloomer in math. I avoided it at all costs. Like once I left high school, I think I had to take, like one math course in undergrad and I chose probability because that was like supposedly the easiest one to do. And then I kind of like dropped it. And when I went in my master's program, like I did only the bare minimum. Like I took whatever biostats course I had to take, and that was it. Whatever epi course I had to take, and that was kind of it. Finally, I got to the point where I was like, like I need to leave this idea behind that math is like an innate skill. Like I can learn this, I can do it. And in my PhD program, I decided to minor in epidemiology, which is very quantitative. I've been really the last couple of years like teaching myself, well, like learning and teaching myself biostatistics and all sorts of like policy analysis methods that had you asked me a few years ago, like I never would have thought I would have been able to do that. And so I think part of that comes from some biases that girls learning math and probably science too face. So I think it took me a good 30 some odd years to get over that. So I think in that sense it's been a challenge, but it's a lesson that I've learned and I hope to pass on to my daughter that she can learn whatever she puts effort into learning.
Yeah, wonderful. It's a great lesson and inspiring, Lauren, that you've kind of moved past that. Katrin, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just very quickly, I think for me, it really depends on the situation, right? So, for example, in this small Muslim village, Giriama Muslim village in Kenya, I would, being a woman in many ways actually gave me the experience that I had because I was brought into that circle of women. And a lot of these Muslim cultures, as a man, you would never have access to that. You're not even allowed to go into the kitchen or into the rooms where the women stay. And um, so I think that was clearly of benefit. But, I can name examples where, being a woman has certainly been a challenge. And, you know, and I would say in any hospital I've ever stepped foot in, you know, I will walk into a room, and even if I'm the senior physician, I'm immediately labeled as the nurse. You know, that's always the first assumption that people make. And again, I have a lot of respect for nurses, but there's just this notion that if you're a woman in the hospital, you're more likely to be a nurse than you are to be a physician. And I think it was actually my graduating year of medical school that for the first time in US history, there were a higher number of women graduating from medical school than men. And that really felt like a huge achievement, because when we go to medical schools and universities and you look on the wall of all of the deans, you know, dating back from the 1800s, they're all men, you know? So I think it is, but again, there's progress being made on that as well, you know, and I think women are achieving things that weren't possible, you know, all that long ago and not that long ago. And, you know, we're seeing Mexico with a female president. And, you know, I think that these are all, I mean, even for us, we have a female vice president, and, you know, we'll see, hopefully, you know, presidential future for her as well. But, you know, I think, so really it's been really dependent on the situation. And I think Lauren also, from her example, noted that as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. For both of you, it's a little bit of a mixed bag that sometimes has worked in your favor, sometimes maybe, you know, something you had to get through, or very interesting. Well, we have one last question for both of you that we're very interested in. I know a lot of people are interested in. We'd love to hear what advice you can give to either other maybe up and coming women leaders like yourselves, or advice to people, others who want to advance, you know, women and girls in the world.
I think, oh,
Go ahead, Lenny.
I
No,
can
no, go
start.
for it.
So this is another question I've been thinking about, and I think it a little bit corresponds to my last response with like getting over math anxiety, is that it's okay to fail. And I think failing is part of how we learn and how we make progress. I think when you look at people who are in leadership roles who have had really successful careers, like you only see the successes. And you don't see, you know, like every like job that they applied to that they didn't get, or like you don't see the universities they applied to that they didn't get into. You don't see grants they applied for that were rejected. You know, like you don't see those stumbles along the way. And I think it can lead to people putting so much pressure on themselves to succeed and be perfect. And if you like do stumble, to like not get back up. So I think it is that's something that I would encourage, is just to like not so much expect failure, but like it does happen. I think it's like part of the experience, and to see it more as like an opportunity for growth and learning. And I think also to like be more transparent about it so it loses stigma. And in the spirit of like transparency, like I had to apply to PhD programs 2 cycles in a row because I didn't get into any programs my first time around. So I had to kind of like regroup and really think through like why I was doing this, and like get really grounded in that, and to come up with ways to improve my application and just like create a stronger application to get in the next round. And I think it builds resilience, and so I think like it's okay to fail.
Yeah, very important lesson. Thank you. Katrin?
So I have a story to share about this from my infectious disease fellowship training. The first year was the most brutal year of training I've ever had, not just in terms of work hours, but just the sheer responsibility of people turning to you for answers on complicated patients. And, you had a lot of patients to carry, and your word meant a lot, and it was all very serious. And, so the cadence would be that new patients would come in. As the ID fellow, I would see the patients and come up with an assessment and plan. And then by the time the senior attending was on service, you would meet up and you would either do bedside rounds or just discuss the cases out, outside the rooms or in an office. And then you'd either go see the patients together or sort of separately. But there was supposed to be this sort of learning component where, I was still a trainee, but I could come up with my own assessment and plan after interviewing the patient, doing the exam, reviewing all of the data of the records. And so on a very hectic day where I was carting myself from one hospital to the other to see my new patients, new consults, follow up on my old patients. And by the time I got to my senior attending to present, I started with an apology. I said, I'm really sorry. It's been really busy. This last patient, I barely had more than 5 minutes with him. And I was about to continue, and this attending, who was a man, this is important, just stopped me. He was like, just stop. He was like, a man would never have apologized. And, initially it kind of took me aback, and I really had to kind of think about it for days and wonder, is he an ally? Was he, or not? Like, I couldn't quite tell what the intention was, but, after some reflection, I realized that he was trying to teach me something that, that I can just skip the apology, like everyone knows that there's certain things that are just standard. It's a busy hospital, you have a lot of patients, just cut to the chase. And so I think that for me, that was just like a reminder that no matter how confident I am or how many successes I might have achieved, that there's always going to be these moments where I am second guessing myself. I have imposter syndrome. I think I'm, the least intelligent person in a room, or who am I to be making these decisions? And just own up to like what I've done and who I am. And I think that watching other women handle that and own that, prowess and intellect, I think that kind of modeling is really important for all the other women in the room, and so I've been trying to be very aware of that, because I've noticed that women are paying attention. I pay attention to other women, and it's through that close attention that you're paying and you're heeding, and then you find yourself in those situations, and you find other ways of reacting and responding and growing, and so I think that has really resonated and across many different lessons. And part of me wants to like write him an email and just say, oh, by the way, I know this was years ago, but thank you.
Wow, I love it. Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you both for sharing your stories with us, for these very thoughtful and nuanced responses and thoughts on things. It's really marvelous and inspiring. And thank you for the work, the amazing work that you do. We need to end our questions and answers right now, and I'm going to pass the floor back to Jody, who's going to kind of round things up for us this evening. So thank you, Jody.
Oh my heavens. I'm speechless. You two are extraordinary. I want to start at the last two items, the item that each of you said about advice, about it's okay to fail, and learning comes from those failed moments. And Lauren, as you talked about that, I went bing, 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 bing. Oh no, this failure, this failure, this failure. Thank you for saying that. I think every woman heard what you said. And Katrin, as many of you who know me, oh my, sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I apologize. I have worked so hard not to say it. And yet there it is. And to hear you say that that is something and that women are more likely to do this, I went, thank you for saying it. So this is sort of an odd way to begin a closure, but it's often these little moments and these points that say so much about how women can be strong and the personal ways that we can be strong. I so appreciate your comments. Lauren, your words about the agency to decide our lives. Women decide our lives and decide about being mothers and what motherhood is. And for some of us who are mothers, the strength of your words about what agency really means for women and for all of us. Think of agency. And as you described it, Lauren, I went, aha, I didn't realize about that agency. Oh my heavens, or that one, the childcare, having enough diapers, paid leave. It gave a real world to what we all can do and how hard it is to sustain that agency for women and women at the point of motherhood. So thank you. Katrin, oh my. What I really appreciated is the elements that were so important to you that created who you are in the early years, and the leaving Iran, and what you said about your mother, about her motherhood, her commitment to you, that she would leave behind all else that she knew to be there for her children. What a statement that you said about your family, and particularly about your mother. And choosing a college, that discovery of women's inquisitiveness and discovery in a setting of women, it helped me think of colleges in a way that I hadn't thought about them before. And what a great opening that can be for young women. And then, of course, what Peace Corps is all about. And appreciating that it's the circles of connection to the community and the world to help women find their place in the world. And how health disparities have showed how much women shoulder the disparities in the world. And I appreciated your closing comment. What can I do next for women and communities? Because women and communities have given so much to me. And I think that becomes a wonderful challenge for all of us in how we challenge and our own commitment for other women and girls. Because as each of us thinks about it, we know what we've been given. And you both illustrated that so beautifully. So thank you. Thank you. And we're going to continue your stories. We're going to find ways to continue to publicize what you have said, because you have given us so much. I feel so enriched. I want to close, but before I close, I want to announce upcoming important events, as you see, of Women of Peace Corps Legacy, and the Extraordinary Women panel at Peace Corps headquarters on November 13th, just a month away. Please sign up. It's there. We're going to have 4 inspiring women leaders talk about their journeys. We heard 2 wonderful journeys tonight on November 13th at the Peace Corps. We're going to hear more, see, and be part of additional women leader journeys. And I want to reconfirm again the importance of the podcasts that we have every other month. And over the 18 months that we have been doing the podcast so far, we now have had 1,000 downloads. This is 1,000 downloads globally of people who have heard about women leaders who influence based on their Peace Corps experience and what Peace Corps means in terms of women and service. I also want to put a pitch here for getting more volunteers for Women in Peace Corps Legacy. As you all know, we're a 100% volunteer organization. And you think of programs like tonight and everything else we're doing, this is all 100% volunteers, and it's women helping women. So please volunteer to be an active part. I'm going to put out 2 particular appeals. We need more committee members for our program and outreach committee, which is the committee that does the programs. They helped with tonight. They are in charge of the event we're having next month, as well as the podcasts, the coffee chats, and other things that we do. Please, we need more volunteers for that committee. And second, we need a couple of volunteers to really help with our communication, which is the help or the support of the website, the support of the newsletter, and the Zoom structures to keep us all communicating well with each other. So those are particular appeals. As you get all excited based on tonight and the wonderful words, put your opportunity saying, yes, I'm there in the chat, or send an email. And Megan will have the email address right here. And so with that, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to Lauren and Katrin in particular, but thank you to all who serve, women who serve, for what we do, what we give back, because somewhere in our life, Peace Corps had impacted us, had brought a community to us, had brought the power of women to us, and we give that back. That's what's important. So thank you for being part of the celebration of the International Day of the Girl Child, and the wonderful examples Lauren and Katrin have given each of us about the power of Peace Corps service for women who have become strong global leaders for everyone around the world. Our awardees have charged us to continue our service. Boy, it has charged me to continue my service. But we all have so much to give. And as Katrin said, and Laura said, it enriches those we serve. Importantly, it enriches us. It gives energy to us to continue to serve. And think of those communities when we worked in the Peace Corps, in whatever capacity, what they gave us. This is what we're doing. And tonight is an example of how we give back. Thank you for being part of us. Thank you for the evening. Thank you for the learning. More to come. But have a good rest of your evening, day, midnight, whatever it might be. But thank you for being part of all that Women of Peace Corps is and what we can be each other for women. And with that, good evening, and I hope you enjoyed the program.
Thank you so much, Jody. Thank you so much, everyone. Looking forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Great program. So special, fabulous. Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.